On April 19, 2023, the tranquil peace of Hudson, Ohio, a wealthy, picture-perfect suburb, was shattered by a chilling mystery. It began at precisely 7:21 a.m., when emergency dispatchers received an unsettlingly quiet call. There were no frantic screams, no sounds of violence, not even the sound of heavy breathing. Instead, the line carried only an eerie, dead silence generated by an automated SOS alert. Modern smartphones feature a built-in safety mechanism that triggers an immediate emergency transmission to law enforcement, complete with the user's location if the side button is pressed 5 times in rapid succession. The operator strained to hear any sign of distress, but after their callback went completely unanswered, the incident was logged as a likely pocket dial, a seemingly harmless accident that would soon take on a terrifying new meaning. Exactly 12 hours after that silent cry for help, as dusk settled over the affluent neighborhood, Officers Peggy and Bowen were dispatched to a large, meticulously manicured property on West Streetsboro Street for what they assumed would be a routine welfare check. A local father had failed to pick up his 5-year-old daughter from school and had completely vanished from contact, leaving loved ones deeply alarmed. Pulling up to the residence, the officers noted a sleek, black Porsche sitting undisturbed in the driveway. A swift walk around the exterior revealed no shattered glass or splintered wood, and the heavy front door was firmly locked. Seeking answers, the officers peered through a kitchen window, and the view inside instantly transformed a standard missing persons report into a horrific crime scene. Sprawled across the floor in a massive, pooling crimson stain was the body of a man wearing nothing but a black bathrobe, showing absolutely no signs of life. Rushing to find an entry point, the officers discovered that the back door was wide open. However, it hadn't just been left unlocked. It had been violently blasted open from the inside out, with chunks of the door frame ripped entirely from the wall and hurled feet away onto the grass. Someone had desperately, savagely fought their way out of that house. Stepping into the residence, the officers initially suspected a home invasion gone wrong. Yet, that theory evaporated the moment they looked around. The keys to the luxury Porsche sat untouched in plain sight near the front door. Priceless electronics, laptops, tablets, and even stacks of cash remained entirely undisturbed. Whoever had invaded this home had absolutely no interest in material wealth. Instead, the investigators found themselves standing in the middle of a bizarre, chaotic scene. Surrounding the victim's body and stretching into the upper levels of the house was a trail of complete disorder. Open condom wrappers littered the floors, while half-empty liquor bottles and canned cocktails sat discarded on the nightstands. The investigation took an even darker turn when officers searched the master bedroom. Tucked away inside the closets, hidden beneath neatly folded layers of clothing, sat an extensive, high-end collection of firearms, including expensive 9mm handguns and a tactical hunting shotgun. What started as a silent morning alert had evolved into a twisted puzzle of intimacy, violence, and hidden danger. On one of the master bedroom nightstands, resting directly beneath a colorful Spider-Man mask belonging to his young daughter, sat 4 loose rounds of unspent ammunition. Despite the presence of these bullets and the extensive arsenal discovered in the closets, the initial forensic examination revealed an unexpected twist. None of the firearms registered to the victim had been fired that day. Whatever weapon had taken his life was completely missing from the property, nowhere to be found inside the house. Yet, that was not the only item unaccounted for. The victim's cell phone, potentially containing vital clues about his final moments, had completely vanished. As crime scene investigators scrutinized the blood-covered kitchen floor, they noticed a crucial piece of physical evidence. Someone had walked directly through the pooling blood on their way out of the house, leaving behind a series of distinct crimson shoe prints. Forensics quickly documented the impressions, identifying the tread pattern as belonging to a pair of Nike Air Force One sneakers. The puzzle pieces confronting the investigators were bizarre and deeply contradictory. They had a body inside the kitchen, cash and priceless valuables left completely untouched, alcohol bottles scattered everywhere, and a heavy back door violently broken open from the inside out. Connect those clues to the silent smartphone emergency alert from early that morning, along with the killer walking away in blood-covered sneakers. And a haunting question emerged. What exactly happened inside that house, and who left wearing those shoes? The man found on the floor was 41-year-old Todd Morgan, a highly respected finance professor at Cleveland State University. His academic pedigree was undeniably impressive. He earned his bachelor's degree, followed by a master's, and in 2015, successfully completed his doctorate at Kent State University. Before returning home to Ohio in 2021, he had built a solid professional reputation, teaching at universities across Massachusetts and Michigan. Students and colleagues alike knew him as an exceptionally organized, reserved intellectual who was remarkably skilled with complex numbers. Outside the university classroom, Todd strove to present himself to the world as a deeply devoted family man. He shared a 10-year-old son with his former wife, Teresa, and had a young daughter from a subsequent relationship with a woman named Marie. From the outside looking in, his life resembled the quintessential picture of the American dream. However, that carefully constructed facade of professional success and domestic bliss had actually started fracturing long before that fateful April morning. Todd's first marriage had dissolved after he became romantically involved with one of his own college students, but the most destructive force in his personal life was a severe dependency on alcohol. His addiction grew so profound that it eventually spilled over into family court, leading a judge to issue an unusually strict and compromising custody order regarding visits with his young daughter. If Todd wanted permission to bring the little girl to his upscale home, he was legally required to provide immediate, documented proof that he was completely sober. This strict court mandate forced him to utilize a specialized portable breath testing device connected to a mobile application. The process was rigid and unyielding. Todd would blow into the breathalyzer, the system would instantly generate a digital report, and the results would automatically be transmitted to Marie. Only after receiving verifiable confirmation that his blood alcohol reading was a perfect 0 would she allow their daughter to spend time under his roof. This tragic reality highlights a staggering contrast between a person's public persona and their private struggles. During the day, a man holding a doctorate stood confidently in front of lecture halls, explaining intricate economic models to the next generation. Yet by evening, that same man was forced to blow into a digital device connected to his phone just to prove he possessed the basic moral fitness to see his own child. It illustrates how vastly different real life can be from the polished images people project to the world. Behind the closed doors of a beautiful, wealthy suburban home, even a highly successful academic can be drowning in dark, personal demons that almost no one around them suspects. While Todd was desperately trying to manage his unraveling life with court orders and breathalyzers, another central figure in this unfolding tragedy was living roughly 20 miles away in Akron, Ohio. This was 31-year-old Terriana Pascal. Unlike Todd, she possessed no advanced academic credentials, nor did she enjoy a polished professional reputation in the community. Instead, her income was derived almost entirely from working in the underground economy as an online escort. Terriana utilized the dating app Bumble as her primary platform to connect with clients, operating an entirely mobile business where she traveled directly to them. Her online profile laid out the terms explicitly. The client would provide the specific location, and she would drive herself to the destination. Once the details were finalized, she would get behind the wheel of her silver Ford SUV and head out into the darkness for another late-night appointment. There was absolutely nothing romantic about these encounters. It was strictly transactional, business defined by set rates, clear expectations, and brief visits to other people's homes. On one side of this equation stood a respected university professor living under rigid, court-ordered sobriety mandates. On the other was a woman earning her living through anonymous meetings arranged online. They originated from entirely different worlds, and their lives moved in completely separate circles. Under any normal circumstances, their paths never would have crossed. However, the digital world possesses a unique way of erasing societal boundaries. It required nothing more than a single swipe on a smartphone screen to collide these two parallel universes. setting a catastrophic chain of events into motion that could never be undone. Their connection began a mere 3 days before the tragedy unfolded inside Todd's home. On April 16, 2023, these two individuals with vastly contrasting lives matched on the dating platform. Their digital conversation was brief, direct, and entirely businesslike. They quickly negotiated the terms of their encounter and arranged for a late-night visit on the evening of April 18th. That night, Todd completed his court-required sobriety check. His breathalyzer device recorded a perfect zero-alcohol reading, and the automated report was instantly transmitted to his daughter's mother. Every single requirement of the judicial custody order had been fulfilled, legally clearing him for his upcoming scheduled parenting time. Shortly before midnight, a silver Ford SUV pulled quietly into the driveway of the well-maintained suburban property. What transpired within the walls of that house before sunrise was never witnessed or documented by anyone. However, digital payment records preserved a remarkably precise timeline of the morning's events. At exactly 7 a.m. on April 19th, a transaction was initiated from Todd's phone via Cash App. The amount transferred was exactly $50. This specific figure immediately stands out as highly unusual. $50 for an entire night is remarkably low. In dozens of true crime cases involving similar escort services, the financial compensation is typically much higher. A transfer of that trivial size looks far less like a full payment for services rendered and much more like mere gas money, or perhaps even an insulting token amount. It is not difficult to imagine that this meager sum may have been the exact spark that triggered a violent dispute, turning an ordinary commercial meeting into something far more sinister. For the next 20 minutes, the digital timeline went completely dark. There were no text messages sent and no additional payments processed. But remember that silent, automated emergency call received by the police dispatch at exactly 7:21 a.m. Just 2 minutes later, at 7:23 a.m., Cash App recorded another financial transaction attempt. This time, someone attempted to transfer a massive sum of $1,000 from Todd's account. Fortunately, the bank's automated fraud protection system flagged the high-dollar transfer and immediately blocked the transaction from going through. Right after that failed financial attempt, the digital trail suddenly burst back to life. Real-time location data showed Todd's phone rapidly moving away from his home on West Streetsboro Street. At that exact same moment, cell phone tower records indicated that Terriana's phone was traveling in the precise same direction, moving at virtually the same speed and mapping the identical route. A short time later, Todd's phone went permanently dark, never to be powered on again. While these digital records provided investigators with a near-flawless chronological timeline, databases alone cannot break down doors or leave bloody footprints across a kitchen floor. Detectives now faced the urgent task of proving who was actually sitting behind the wheel of that silver SUV that morning, speeding away into the dawn with a dead man's phone. While investigators were reviewing the rejected banking transactions, crime scene specialists continued their methodical examination of the blood-covered kitchen floor. Amidst the scattered personal belongings, overturned furniture, and splintered pieces of wood from the shattered doorframe, they uncovered another major piece of physical evidence. Spent shell casings lay scattered across the floor in no obvious pattern. Investigators carefully documented and collected 8 of them, identifying them as standard 9mm casings. Detectives immediately turned their attention back to the expensive handguns and hunting shotgun that had been discovered earlier in the master bedroom, buried beneath stacks of clothing. A ballistics examination was performed without delay, and the results quickly answered a critical question. None of Todd's firearms had been fired that day. The homeowner had not pulled a trigger. Whoever committed the crime had brought their own weapon and taken it with them when they fled. Detectives also recognized another reality of the situation. This was not an isolated rural property where violent, loud noises might easily go unnoticed. It was a dense, upscale residential neighborhood. You simply do not discharge a firearm multiple times, break apart a heavy doorframe, and flee the scene without someone hearing or seeing something. Officers began canvassing the neighboring homes, knocking on doors to find witnesses. Before long, They arrived at the residence of Eugene and Sherry, a married couple living just a short distance down the street from Todd's house. To understand what those neighbors witnessed, the timeline must be rewound exactly 12 hours, back to approximately 7:20 a.m. on the morning of April 19th, just moments before the silent emergency alert reached police dispatch. Eugene and Sherry had been up early that morning, and they told investigators they were certain the morning peace was suddenly shattered by a series of loud bangs. Eugene estimated he heard 6 or 7 distinct shots echoing through the air. Curious about the unexpected noise, the couple walked over to their windows to investigate. The first thing that caught their attention was an unfamiliar vehicle parked in Todd's driveway. A silver Ford SUV stood out immediately, because they were accustomed to seeing only Todd's expensive black Porsche parked there. Though the distance was too great to make out precise facial features, they clearly remembered seeing an individual with shoulder-length hair. According to both witnesses, this person suddenly burst out of the open back door of the house, ran to the silver SUV, quickly grabbed an unidentified object from inside the vehicle, and sprinted straight back into the home. Just a couple of minutes later, the same individual emerged from the house a second time. This time, their movements looked completely different. They appeared frantic, hurried, and visibly shaken. The individual jumped behind the wheel of the silver SUV, slammed it into gear, and sped away, completely leaving the neighborhood behind. It is remarkable how unpredictable people can become under extreme stress. It was broad daylight on a quiet suburban street, where neighbors recognize each other just by their silhouettes. Yet this person was running back and forth between a damaged back door and their vehicle immediately after a series of loud gunshots. From the outside, it looked like pure improvisation fueled by panic, adrenaline, and a complete loss of composure. Whatever had just happened inside that kitchen, logic clearly was no longer driving those decisions. Back with the investigation, the detectives finally possessed a rock-solid timeline. Eugene and Sherry's account of the gunshots matched almost perfectly with the automated emergency call that had reached dispatch at exactly 7:21 a.m. With this critical window confirmed, investigators immediately submitted an emergency request to the telecommunications providers. Within a short time, analysts successfully identified the smartphone that had triggered the silent emergency call and cross-referenced it with cell tower data from that morning to yield a precise result. That single set of records seamlessly connected every major piece of the investigation. The witness descriptions of the individual with shoulder-length hair, the presence of the silver Ford SUV, and the electronic trail all pointed definitively to one suspect, Tariana Pascal. With her identity confirmed, an immediate alert was broadcast for her vehicle, while investigators secured access to her real-time cellular data. At 7:27 a.m., a mere 6 minutes after the automated SOS signal reached dispatch, Pascal's phone was detected traveling north on Interstate 271 at approximately 59 miles per hour. The search area narrowed rapidly as the digital trail guided law enforcement to a neighboring Akron apartment complex on Grand Street, known to be the residence of Pascal's sister. As patrol units flooded the parking lot, they immediately spotted the familiar silver Ford SUV, noting that someone had already stripped away its rear license plate. A tactical team breached the apartment, detaining Tariana without incident before transporting her to the police station for interrogation. Simultaneously, crime scene technicians began meticulously processing the vehicle left in the lot. Hidden inside the trunk, they recovered a 9mm handgun. The weapon was rushed to the ballistics lab, where forensic specialists compared it against the 8 shell casings recovered from the victim's kitchen floor amid the splintered remnants of the broken door frame. It is staggering to consider how frequently a single investigative misstep or a temporary lack of evidence can set off a chain of events that permanently alters countless lives. The ballistics comparison came back as a flawless 100% match, but what investigators uncovered next shocked even seasoned detectives. The handgun retrieved from the SUV's trunk was already logged in law enforcement databases, directly linked to an unsolved fatal shooting in Cleveland from 2021. That prior homicide case had languished without answers for nearly 2 years. In a bizarre twist of fate, just days before her late-night encounter at Todd's house, detectives had actually brought Tariana in for questioning regarding that very same cold case. She had been thoroughly investigated, but due to an insufficient amount of direct physical evidence at the time, authorities were legally obligated to release her. The justice system had reached a frustrating dead end, leaving a dangerous individual free to roam the streets while still carrying the exact same murder weapon in her vehicle. Realizing the gravity of this previous near miss and the immense significance of what had transpired, investigators approached this new interrogation with an entirely different, hyper-focused mindset. This time, authorities were absolutely determined to construct a case so airtight that the defense would have virtually no room to maneuver or challenge the allegations. Piece by piece, the mountain of evidence against her grew exponentially. Cyber investigators began a meticulous examination of Tariana Pascal's social media accounts, and it did not take long to uncover recent photographs of her wearing a pair of Nike Air Force One sneakers. The images clearly displayed the distinctive tread pattern, which was an identical match to the bloody shoe prints left leading toward the shattered back door. The digital evidence became even more damning as tech specialists dug deeper. Investigators discovered that she had attempted to obliterate her tracks by completely wiping her old smartphone and purchasing a new one, operating under the mistaken belief that a factory reset would permanently erase her digital history. It did not. Cloud backups had preserved nearly everything. When forensic analysts successfully recovered her web browsing history, they uncovered a deeply incriminating and highly specific series of internet queries. She had frantically searched phrases like, "How do I keep police from tracking my phone?" Later, her searches shifted to monitoring news updates regarding the Cleveland State University professor's case. Even more striking, investigators documented 41 separate searches for her own name in direct connection with the violent events that transpired that morning on West Streetsboro Street. It is difficult to imagine a more transparent admission of panic than repeatedly searching for your own name in local crime reports before law enforcement has even publicly named you as a suspect. Simultaneously, the forensic laboratory added another undeniable layer of proof to the file. Crime scene technicians had previously collected discarded cigarette butts and used condoms scattered across the master bedroom floor. Advanced DNA testing on these items produced a flawless genetic profile that matched Tariana Pascal perfectly. By that point, the overwhelming combination of physical, digital, and biological evidence left almost no room for a convincing defense. By the time Tariana was officially taken into custody, investigators had already assembled nearly every piece of this horrifying puzzle. Only one critical component remained outstanding: the official findings from the medical examiner, which would detail the confrontation from a clinical standpoint. According to the autopsy report, Todd's chances of survival had been practically non-existent. 8 rounds had been fired at close range, 7 of which struck his body. While most of the bullets hit his torso and head, 2 specific wounds near the collarbone proved to be immediately fatal. These projectiles caused catastrophic damage to his major blood vessels, causing him to bleed out within minutes on his own kitchen floor. The emergency SOS button pressed on his iPhone appears to have been nothing more than a final, desperate, and instinctive attempt to reach for salvation while his body was rapidly shutting down. In September 2024, the case finally arrived at the Summit County Courthouse. By this time, the prosecution's narrative was entirely bulletproof. Cell tower records established an indisputable timeline. DNA matched Tariana to the bedroom trash, and ballistics anchored the handgun in her trunk to the shell casings in the kitchen. Faced with this devastating triad of digital, biological, and forensic proof, the defense never seriously attempted to build an acquittal strategy. Her attorneys fully understood that if this case went before a jury, their client would face a maximum sentence that would leave her with no realistic path back to freedom. Recognizing the futility of a trial, Tariana made a pragmatic decision. She accepted a plea agreement and formally admitted responsibility, bringing the case to a swift conclusion without a protracted courtroom battle. The judge imposed a sentence of life in prison with no eligibility to request parole for 23 years, meaning most of her young adulthood and middle-aged years will be spent behind bars. Present in the courtroom to witness justice being served were the people closest to Todd, including his grieving mother and his former partner Marie, who is now left to raise their young daughter alone. Their emotional victim impact statements were profoundly honest. Neither woman attempted to paint Todd as a flawless man or conceal his intense personal struggles from the public eye. Instead, they openly acknowledged his long, agonizing battle with alcohol dependence, while emphasizing that he was genuinely striving to rebuild his life for the sake of his son and daughter. He had faithfully completed every single court-ordered breath test, no matter how humiliating or degrading the process felt, simply because he wanted to be a dependable father and remain an active, loving presence in his children's lives. Yet, in a matter of mere minutes, Tariana's violent actions stripped that hard-fought opportunity away forever, leaving two young children to grow up entirely without their father. As this intricate timeline of events comes together, it leaves behind a chilling realization: reality is far more fragile than most of us care to admit. A person can spend decades meticulously building a prestigious academic career, earning advanced doctoral degrees, fighting deep-seated private demons that almost no one else sees, and strictly adhering to grueling court mandates just to stay connected to the people they love most. That represents an entire lifetime of calculated effort and sacrifice. And yet, in a single chaotic morning, all of it can be violently erased in an instant. Sometimes, the boundary separating an ordinary routine day from a permanent, life-altering tragedy is much thinner than we ever dare to imagine. It serves as a stark reminder to take care of yourself, think deeply about the hidden risks embedded in everyday decisions, and always remain exceptionally mindful of exactly who you choose to invite into the sanctuary of your home.